welcome to Thursday morning, everybody. This is going to be a big day. We're really looking forward to today. We're going to have lots of fun. We do have John Strand coming up here, the top of the hour, or is it the bottom of the hour? I don't know, Velda. What is it? The bottom of the hour, I suppose.
It's the top. I wondered that too. I figured it out. You know how it works? It's the minute hand on the clock. When the minute hand's pointing up, that's the top of the hour. When it's pointing down, it's at the bottom of the hour. Now it makes sense. I didn't know that. I felt stupid when I realized that, because of course that's what it means. But
so that would make it at the bottom of the hour officially, right? Because it's now 10 a.m. Eastern, 8 a.m. In Mountain Time.
Yes.
And, John is going to do a welcome here at 8:30 a.m. according to the official schedule. If we can get John's microphone working, and I think somebody's out in his driveway trenching and some internet right now, and they should reach him by the time we get to the bottom of the hour with any luck.
Scheduled to be splicing fiber right now, and we just
that's splicing the fiber. That's right. No, it's a real deal. We like to give John lots of crap because we love him very much, but I think John did actually string an Ethernet cable to his mailbox, if I remember correctly, and had to bury it. And because let's just say that John and internet service providers don't live close to each other, and we'll just leave it right there.
The little valley he lives in is kind of in a shadow for cell coverage too. So
yeah,
didn't he have a cantenna at one point? The Pringles can. He was working, like he was doing his actual work over a Pringles can up to his driveway at the top there, so he could get a signal.
I think us
Pringles relay.
We're going to send John 2 tin cans and a piece of string for Christmas, and we're hoping.
Oh my gosh.
We did recently get asked to reschedule a meeting because at the time of the meeting every week he'd be in the field with cattle.
Right.
So he said, there's no cell service out in the field by when we're farming. So if you could reschedule this meeting for us to a time we have cell service.
This is my farmer day. I don't computer on farmer days.
So it's all, and look, guys, this is nothing but all in fun. We love John very much. Let me just repeat that. We are not just ragging on John. Well, maybe we are a little bit. I'm gonna do a shameless plug here, really quick.
Before you do that, Josh, sorry to kill your role. You were in such a role, but somehow the track 1 got retitled to BB King. So I don't.
Yes.
What
was Ken just talking about? He was just talking about I screw things up accidentally.
Yeah.
Well played, BB.
So I don't know how that happened, or maybe who did it, but track 1 is now called BB King, and that may be confusing for some of the attendees.
Does that mean I don't get a break today? I have to stay the whole time?
You're on nonstop.
It's also weird how you were able to change the name to BB King.
Like, I'm not seeing that in Discord, but I'll believe you.
It's the GoToWebinar track has been renamed to BB King. So like you would get a certificate saying you attended BB King.
That's awesome.
All right. So everybody forgive BB because clearly he is the king today.
I'm gonna look and see. I tried to change my name, and that worked.
Did you do it inside GoToWebinar? Because maybe that.
I did it in 2 places.
Oh, I found it. Okay.
I did it.
The world is saved. Jason is going to rename the
Put me back in my place.
All right. Good job, BB. Way to save it. Way to save it, BB.
Wow.
What you can do by accident, an attacker can do on purpose.
That's the new theme of the conference, apparently. It's happened 3 times already.
Yeah, that's it's kind of like when we do Security Weekly. It's the biggest sideways oops that happens becomes the title of the episode. So it's a thing. So now that you guys have all gone through that, can I do my shameless plug now?
I'm introducing Lesley. Lesley's talking about threat hunting and how we're doing it wrong, and it's okay how we're doing it, I guess.
Oh well, that was
easy.
If you want to.
I've been trying to get Lesley to come to Wild West Hackin Fest, I think now for 3 years, and you're always traveling. You're always on the road. And I think the last time I asked you, it was something like
I'm
5
not traveling now.
Right?
I know Lesley misses you and going to the conferences, and I miss everybody horribly. I love being at home, don't get me wrong, but no, Lesley has done a lot in the area of incident response. She is literally working for a company whose sole purpose in life is saving human civilization. And you look at what Dragos is doing and the amazing things that they're doing for SCADA ICS, Power Grid. It isn't just that they have a really, really badass product. It's what they're giving back to the community in the form of presentations and also some of the research that's coming out. And I've got to be honest with you, you guys scare the hell out of me. There's a lot of hyperbole that basically goes around SCADA ICS, but you can always trust the people from Dragos and Lesley and Rob Emley, because we have to spell out his whole name because he's mini Rob Lee. We need to make sure that we listen to what they say because they are literally on the front lines. And as far as Lesley being here, I'm glad that we finally got her to present for us. I'm gonna get you here in person, and I've got Wagyu cows, so we will actually do Wagyu steak when you come out here. So we'll try to get that set up. Now I know a lot of people are like, "Oh, wait, is that the steak dinner that you're gonna give?" No, I don't have that many cows. But probably for the speaker dinner, I'll probably try to get some Wagyu for everybody. We're gonna get you guys out here. But we love everything that you do, and you're kind of an inspiration for so many people in the community. And I absolutely love the story of going up into the Great White North to replace a router or change something on a router and forgot the cable. So it's just really an honor to have you here and kicking off the first day of the conference. So I'm going to hand it over to you and your presentation. Most everything you've been told about threat hunting is a lie, and that's okay. So Lesley, you have the stage.
Thank you so much. I'm so glad to be here, and I really do hope to be there in person, hopefully sooner than later. We're all missing traveling. We're all missing going to cons in person. So I'm happy to be here today with everybody. So thanks for having me. Today we're going to talk about threat hunting. And first of all, for those of you who don't know me, I'll do a little quick introduction. My name is Lesley. Hello, nice to meet you all. I'm a differ professional. I've been doing this for a long time, probably professionally well over half my life now. And currently I do differ on industrial control systems. As Sean mentioned, I work for a company called Dragos. That's all we do is critical infrastructure. So water, power, oil and gas, things like that, manufacturing, transportation, trains, planes, automobiles. We work on securing and analyzing incidents that occur on those types of industrial systems. Beyond that, I do a lot of community outreach through my blog, through Twitter, through conferences, through the news, through all kinds of different outlets. I like to hear myself talk, I guess, so sorry you have to deal with that today. In my free time, I teach martial arts. I teach middle schoolers and grade schoolers. I study form martial arts, and I have currently 2 black belts. And I knife fight semi-professionally, so I guess that's a thing. I have a life outside of InfoSec. So why am I talking to you in a keynote talk at this really well-known conference about threat hunting? It's because we have a big problem in defining this topic and talking about how to do it in our community. It's like this ambiguous term, and everybody throws it around in marketing and in product and in talks and in all kinds of different educational materials in college classes. And nobody has a consistent idea of what it actually means. In fact, there's a lot of misconceptions out there, and that's a really big problem because this is a really important topic to security today. And it's something that a lot of us really need to be developing capability for properly. So I'm going to try to, in this keynote talk, I will be trying to fix your concept of threat hunting and what it is and why it's important. Because everybody keeps getting told to threat hunt, and sometimes they get told to threat hunt without a clear definition of what does a successful threat hunt look like? What does threat hunting actually mean? And all these memes that I stole for this talk, they're They're just from random people on the generators on the internet. So if you made these, I'm very, very impressed by you, and we're on the same wavelength. So thank you for the anonymous donors of these. So why do I have the right to talk to you about threat hunting? Well, being that this is not something that's been defined by the Oxford English Dictionary or anything, you can definitely disagree with me about everything I see in this talk, and that's fine. My credentials to talk about threat hunting it's what I do a large portion of my time when I'm not doing incident response. As we'll discuss in this talk, incident response and threat hunting really go kind of hand in hand. They use a lot of the same tools, the same techniques, the same knowledge and experience. So they're really a good combination of proactive and reactive use of the same skill set and the same tools. So I do a lot of threat hunting. I do a lot of threat hunting for tons of different customers all over the world. I also teach a course in it, a 5-day course at Dragos. I've developed some of the curriculum for it. So from an academic perspective, I am out there writing papers and discussing, kind of textbook definitions for what threat hunting is. And I have to do it in all kinds of different environments. I have to do threat hunting in Windows 98 environment, and also in Windows 10 environments, and in Mac heavy environments, Linux heavy environments. So with lots of different types of systems, lots of ages of systems, lots of limitations in industrial environments about what I can do. So anyway, if you disagree with everything I say in this talk, that's perfectly cool. When we can go to a bar again, we can have a nice argument about this over a beer at the bar, and that's cool. I don't mind. But I'll give you some ideas, and hopefully they help you do threat hunting better. I hope you find something useful in this talk to take back to your employer, to take back to your educational program or your certification program, and do threat hunting a little bit better. All right, so why do we need to threat hunt? Let's start with that. That's simple, basic concept. Why is it important to do this ambiguous, undefined thing? Well, okay, so think back to the 80s and the early days of computer hacking. So what did people do at first? Well, they built little things by hand, or they attacked systems manually. So there was a lot of social engineering. Attacks were usually one-offs. They were designed to do one thing. They weren't these mass-scale crimeware type things that we deal with today. So a lot of human-funded stuff. But as computer hacking became commodified and people started to do it to make money and as a business and as part of, espionage, sabotage efforts, geopolitical things, they started to automate it, as one does. I'm going to tell you later on, I have a couple maxims I'm going to tell you. One of them, it makes everybody mad, is hackers are lazy, but it's not really a dig on hackers like us or even evil hackers. It's just, human beings usually take the path of least resistance. It's smart to work smarter, not harder. So if there's an easy way to break into a system and there's a really hard way, well, maybe for kicks you do the really hard way. But if you're doing things as part of a financial business effort, state-sponsored effort, you're going to take the path of least resistance that works the best. That's just common sense and good use of your time. So people started using more automation to launch their attacks. And then we start seeing commodity malware and worms. So larger scales. And a lot more automation and attack tools too. So we start seeing, automated platforms that are launching attacks, at least scanning, things like Nmap start appearing. So less of the time-consuming things that can be automated are done by hand, and that's smart on the both the penetration testing side of things and, of course, the criminal hacking side of things. And what did defenders do? Well, they reacted just like they always do. Now they're not detecting these one-off attacks. Now they're detecting patterns of things that are happening over and over again. So the same strains of malware and the same types of attack tools that do the same things in the same sorts of ways over and over and over again. So we built tools to detect that kind of stuff, like antivirus, like firewalls that can detect certain patterns and certain attacks against different ports. We built a lot of automation around detection to catch the automated attacks. And there's been cat and mouse going back and forth about that for ages. The defensive tools get better, and the adversary's tactics and tools get better. But we've reached this critical point where a lot of the more sophisticated adversaries have realized that trying to fool computers is a lot trickier now than it is to fool humans. So it's really smarter to do something we call live off the land. So that means socially engineer or phish humans and use authorized tools and credentials to get into their network, bypassing security tools completely, instead of using blingy, glitzy malware that we saw a lot of use of 10, 15 years ago in these more types of sophisticated attacks. So they're doing a lot of this now. That's the state of things in advanced attacks right now. And I deal with a lot of state-type adversaries, advanced adversaries, large crimeware groups. They're trying to do things in less malware and tool-related ways and using more existing tools on network, like PowerShell, to launch their attacks, or stolen administrative credentials, stolen VPN credentials, just abusing existing administrative accounts, their service account, because that's smart. It is harder for a computer to detect human type attack activity like that. The computer can see it, but detecting that it's evil and that somebody needs to analyze it, not so much. Computers are very, very good at detecting computer patterns. You can set computers to detect signatures of patterns and behavioral analytics for patterns. And you can detect a lot of computer type fronted attacks, malware, things like that. We're getting really good at detecting malware. Yes, it's still a cat and mouse battle, but we're pretty good at that at this point. We've got EDR, we've got, next generation firewalls that have, malware scanners, things like that. We've got Yara. Yeah, so we've got a lot of cool tools for detecting computer related stuff automatically with computers. But computers are not great at detecting human activity, and they're pretty bad at detecting humans tricking humans. So somebody socially engineers your admin, gets their credential, and uses their VPN connection and their remote desktop for weeks. That's hard for a computer to detect because it looks like a human doing human things. And yet there's machine learning and stuff, but I have a problem with like the anomaly detection type tactic of detecting things based on change. So yes, if you say, tell me about everything new an administrator does on my network, well, sure, you're going to see it. There will be a detection in your logs for the person with the stolen account for your administrator. There will be a detection among the other 1 million detections for things that are happening on your network. So not so great, not so ideal. So AI and machine learning is not the be-all, end-all here. I'm sorry. It's a useful tool. Machine learning is a useful tool that we can use in security analysis. And we always want to use the right tool for the job. But we need human brains to do threat hunting. Threat hunting is a human thing. If you get one thing out of this talk, please get that out of this talk. There's no magic black box that you can buy that will do threat hunting for your organization. I'll talk about some tools and techniques that you can use that will be useful in threat hunting. There's lots of those. But human brains are the power behind threat hunting. We're using human brains to detect patterns that computers can't detect, to use those gut feelings that happen in humans and our innate knowledge of how adversaries might be working and the complex ways that humans behave. We are better at detecting that than computers ever will be. Well, I can't say ever. Maybe we'll have the holodeck someday, but for the foreseeable future, our brains are really good at figuring out the evil things that humans are doing on the fly. And computers, not so much. They can be useful. They are still good at detecting tools and computer-related stuff, but they're not great at detecting stolen account, using a service account to move laterally that's already authorized. Things like that. Social engineering. That's a lot harder for a machine to do. But that's good. That's great. We don't want to automate this because we've got this pool of analysts right now, security analysts, and what are we using for them for? Our tier 1, our tier 2 analysts in our security operations center. Well, in a lot of cases, we're still using them to triage the same alerts over and over and over again. That's the sad reality of it, especially at MSSPs. You're using analysts in Ticket Farm, and you're burning them out. There's probably going to be talks at this conference about about burnout and alert fatigue and how people are getting sick and tired of looking at the same alerts over and over and over again, and they want to get out of InfoSec because they're miserable. These tasks should be automated. We are at a point where detection of common commodity malware and common tools, things like that, should mostly be handled by machine. They're good at doing that. You know what's a lot more interesting and causes a lot less burnout? Doing interesting hunting and investigation. That's an interesting thing that helps your analysts learn and grow. That's really, really cool. So threat hunting is actually going to train our analysts to become better security people, to grow to the next level, to think critically. Use your wonderful pool of human brains that you have in your security organization, not for triaging alerts. You should be working to automate that. You should be working to let computers do as much of that as possible. Weed out the false positives. Make that streamlined. And use those analysts to do the next level of things, which is detecting those more sophisticated human attacks. And the things that our computers just aren't good at detecting yet for various reasons. And I'll talk about what some of those reasons why we can't put automatic detection and we need threat hunting instead can possibly be. Here's another thing I really want to bang into your head. Threat hunting is proactive. It's proactive, you guys. And this seems simple, but people keep getting it confused when I'm talking to them, and that's okay. But we're going to talk about this right now. So the purpose of threat hunting is proving or disproving the existence of bad stuff on your network using hypotheses about where it might probably exist based on a lot of different criteria. So you're making a hypothesis about where evil may exist. You don't know that evil exists. You haven't had an alert fire. You don't have an incident. You're going out and trying to find evil based on where it may exist that your machines potentially couldn't detect. It is not alert triage, so you're not responding to alerts that already happened. That's another job. That's the one that we're trying to automate away and get our analysts out of so that they don't burn out from alert fatigue. It's not threat intelligence, although we use threat intelligence in threat hunting. They're two different things. It's not IOC sweeps. That's not threat hunting. Again, IOCs can be a useful part of threat hunting, but IOCs are highly automatable. You can throw IOCs into lots of different security products, into signatures, etc., and catch IOCs. So we want to do more than that. It's not incident response. Incident response is reactive. Incident response is something bad has been found on your network, and you're performing an investigation around that. If you see something that might be an incident and you start investigating it, that's not hunting for threats. You're doing incident response. You're now investigating something that looks suspicious. You're doing triage and IR in your network. Hunting is going out and being proactive, thinking about what an adversary could potentially be doing and trying to see if that's actually happened. Now let's talk about that. All right, so there is a spectrum of maturity. This is another problem I see in people's threat hunting programs. And I would like to tell all of you who are watching this talk right now, go out and start a threat hunting program. But that's not realistic. There are prerequisites for starting a decent threat hunting program. To understand that, let's talk about the maturity of cybersecurity organizations. So what do you have to have at the very basis when you start a security organization? Not everybody does, but this is what the way it should be, you guys. All right. Architectural and vulnerability knowledge. What's out there in your environment? Do you have an asset inventory? Do you have a network map? Do you do some kind of assessment for vulnerabilities or, vulnerable systems, out-of-date systems? Are you doing some tracking of that? You need to do that before you can do other security things. You really need to know what's out there and what you're trying to secure before you can secure it. This seems like common sense when I'm talking to you at a security conference, but I see so many organizations that have ended up in the infinity level of this, or tried to end up in the infinity level of this maturity spectrum, and they don't have those things. And yes, very few organizations have a very, very, very good asset inventory, but having something that's getting there is really important to doing security because, again, you can't secure things without knowing what you're going to secure. So after you have that, you can move to detection capabilities. So your IDS, your antivirus, your logging, getting Windows event logs, getting Sysmon, things like that, eating logs, processing them. Being able to detect some bad stuff or potentially bad stuff automatically. And then from there, you can build onto that, because now you're getting that data, and you can set some humans to it, and they can start triaging and responding to the things that the system finds. So that's where you have your SOC capability. So now you can start monitoring for stuff and responding to it. Hopefully, you don't necessarily have internal incident response capability, but you have some incident response plan where you can escalate things to an external party or another team in your organization. So that's kind of the next level of maturity. And after that, that's when we can start building threat hunting capability. We know enough about our environment, and we can see enough of our environment, and we know what to do if we find something bad. Now we can start proactively trying to go beyond the capability of those automatic detection systems and find some more super secret, deep embedded, unknown evil. That's where we start doing threat hunting. I have a lot of people call me in to do threat hunting in organizations that haven't done the early stages of this maturity cycle. And it's rough on me, and I'm a terrible salesperson. I'm just the worst salesperson in the world. But look, I'm not cheap. I'm a principal incident responder at a boutique cybersecurity company, and my time is not cheap. We have very competitive, affordable rates, but just the nature of sending in a principal incident responder at any cybersecurity company to deal with an incident, paying a lot of money is, even if you're on a retainer, the retainer is kind of expensive. That's just the nature of bringing in external threat hunting or incident response. The saddest thing to me that really frustrates me as a person of integrity and an ethical person is when I get called into an environment where they haven't done any of these early stages, and I have to build them out for them on my incident response time. So my hourly rate, whatever that is, plus the overhead costs of doing an engagement. Me building an asset inventory is a lot more expensive than, using one of your IT people over a long period of time to build an asset inventory. I'm sorry, that's just how it is. Make efficient use of your time and money. Build this out in advance before you bring me in to do incident response or threat hunting. Because if I'm brought into threat hunting and there's no asset inventory, there's no network map, there's no detection capability, I am going to have to sit there and work out those prerequisites to some degree for your organization. So maturity here. We want to work towards threat hunting. It's really important because adversaries are moving in a direction where we need threat hunting to catch them, but you can't do it until you've done some things in advance. So what do you need to do in advance? You need architectural knowledge, of course. So how is your network laid out? What devices are out there? What operating systems? What are your IP addressing conventions, your naming conventions? How do people operate in your environment? What's kind of your normal baseline for operations? When do your admins log in? When are your systems up, down, whatever? What security tools do you have in place? So basic understanding of what's going on in your environment and how it's secured. Risk and consequence functional modeling. This is really hard for IT people. OT or ICS people do this all the time. This is saying, hey, what would my worst day ever as a company be? Let's go to our strategy as a company and say, what would our catastrophic worst day be? And modeling risk backwards. So this is how we should identify crown jewels. So if our worst day ever is something's getting on fire in our industrial environment, that's pretty easy to model backwards from. So what systems and what processes could cause a facility catch on fire? Okay, let's break that down by components of those systems. Which components of those systems could be influential in a fire starting, and which ones couldn't be at all? And then what mitigations are in place? What could prevent that from happening? And so are those components actually of concern? Could they actually generate that consequence? So we model backwards. We build an understanding of our crown jewels and our risk by understanding what consequences we actually care about as an organization. IT people kind of see security in a bubble sometimes. That shouldn't be the case. We should always be thinking about consequences and risk, but we're bad at that. So we should be doing that, though. We should understand what we care about happening in an environment, because that tells us where we need to focus our attention. during incident response, during monitoring, during threat hunting. Data source understanding. I see a lot of people with good asset inventories, and they know kind of what their network layout looks like, but they don't know what data sources they have. Like, they don't know what collections of evidence and data they have to work with as incident responders or security operations professionals or threat hunters. So they don't know what logs they have or how long they're retained or where to get them when they go to cold storage or how to access them, things like that. So you should have a very good understanding of what collections of data you have available, as well as their retention and the access to that data. And resource identification. You need to know what you have available to do threat hunting. So what tools do you have? What people do you have who have threat hunting skills? Who are you going to train? So you need to know all these things to do threat hunting well. You can't skip any of these steps. If you try to, I will be sitting there building your asset inventory for you at whatever hourly rate. I'm sure that our salespeople would be happy to sell you that, but I would like to save you the money because I'm a terrible salesperson. I would like you to be efficient and prepare for things in advance. So you also need 3 types of human knowledge to do threat hunting well. And this comes straight out of a David Bianco and Rob Lee paper, as Stan's white paper. It's generating hypotheses for successful threat hunting. I highly recommend if you want to learn more about this topic, go track it down. But they break these categories of human knowledge into 3 categories. Situational awareness, so that's what's going on in my organization that could impact my threat model. What's changing? New acquisitions, mergers, new products that people might want to steal, operational changes that might impact our perception with the public, things like that. So lots of things change our company's threat model and what's targeted inside our company all the time, and we need to be aware of that to do good threat hunting. We can also use threat intelligence. So if we've got good threat intelligence partners, we can certainly use that to do good threat hunting. So that's another great resource for doing good threat hunting. We should have some of that too. So internal, external threat intelligence. And then there's domain expertise, and that's just knowing how bad people do stuff with computers. So that could be cybersecurity domain knowledge, so how are attacks launched? And then also like system or process knowledge. How does your financial system work? Or if you're an electrical power provider, how does your power plant work? How does the process function? Where are there potential failure points? So that can obviously give you ideas of where you might want to find evil as well. So all 3 of these things can be used individually or in combination with one another to go do some threat hunting, because this is again going out and looking for things your systems can't detect well that a bad person could be doing. So all 3 of these sources can combined or individually give you ideas about where to do that. So just sum this craziness all up, all right? To make good threat hunting hypotheses, we need to know where and when an attacker or malware might realistically go in our environment, cause something we care about to happen. So if we don't care that our systems get infected with Conficker, then why would we hunt for Conficker? And what collections of data we can use to potentially detect this? So what log sources are we going to look in? Do we have logging in that part of our network, or do we have to go out and capture packets? Or pull hard drive images, memory images, whatever. What visibility do we have? What evidence do we have to hunt through that we could use to investigate this? I keep talking about hypotheses. All right, so here's the dealio with hypotheses. They're really, really, really important to threat hunting. So threat hunting is a science. It is deductive reasoning. It is detective work. It is using the scientific method. I'm going to take you back to 5th grade science class where you had your little trifold science fair project and you wrote your hypothesis down, and then you tried to prove or disprove your hypothesis about potatoes or model volcanoes or whatever it was, people's fingerprints, I don't know. But think back to that scientific method that you used in your science projects. You had a hypothesis, and then you worked to test that hypothesis and try to disprove it. Now, why do you try to disprove a hypothesis instead of prove it? Well, first of all, we have biases as analysts, and that's a problem. But it's usually much simpler to disprove a hypothesis than prove it. it can look like you can prove that there's somebody evil on your network, but actually disproving that there's somebody evil on your network without any specifics is really hard to do. You can certainly go out and prove it, but it's not a good hypothesis for threat hunting because it's going to be almost impossible to disprove that there's, in general, a bad person on your network. You've got to be way more specific than that. So it's a good tactic when you're dealing with science and dealing with hypotheses to always try to disprove your hypotheses. I'll give you some examples. This is kind of a complicated thing to understand. We also need to scope our hypotheses down because threat hunting is often like thrown at an analyst team. They're like, go threat hunt. And our human brains are wonderful at detecting evil from humans, but they're limited. You know, we can only look at a certain amount of data at a time without it losing our attention, and we start looking at the beginning of end of data instead of looking at the middle. We get overwhelmed by large quantities of data. So our threat hunts should be scoped to a reasonable amount of time and space in our network. So maybe a week, maybe a month, depending on the log source, maybe a certain subnet or VLAN. So our threat hunts should be scoped to something reasonable for our tools, our log aggregators, and our humans to deal with. So just to help you understand this a little bit better, falsifiable, again, instead of trying to prove a hypothesis, instead of trying to prove that there's evil on the network, which in theory seems possible, I should always try to be able to disprove it. That's a good hypothesis. If I know with certainty or a certain level of certainty that I can go out and prove that it's not happening, that's a good hypothesis. Testable. Am I going to, with the log sources that I have access to today and the tools I have today and the knowledge my analysts have, actually go try to do this hunt, actually try to just disprove this hypothesis? Is this something they can reasonably do? And for what time and space will this hypothesis be tested? That's the scope. So what are we scoping this down to in terms of logical space, physical space, time, etc.? What's reasonable? We need to know those things to build a good hypothesis. So here's a bad hypothesis. This is going to help you understand this falsifying concept a little bit better. So here's a hypothesis I see a lot from people who are trying to build threat hunting programs, and it doesn't work. It's a bad person. He's using some ODAs to attack my stuff. Can you prove that? Well, possibly. I mean, if you look for some stuff and you find a novel attack, okay, then yes, you've proven it. But can you actually disprove this? Well, what ODAs are you looking for? Do we know about them yet? Do we have any idea what's out there? Do we have any idea where to look? Where in our network? Oh, and what time? This isn't testable. We can't disprove this to a reasonable level of confidence. It's not a good hypothesis. We can't with certainty say no, they're not. And it's not scoped as something that our tools or our people are going to be able to actually manage. You're going to burn your analysts out. We're going to get alert fatigue again. So this is not a reasonable hypothesis. Better hypothesis. All right. So here's a decent one. We're merging. So I have those three parts of our knowledge here that we use for threat hunting. So first of all, there's situational awareness. I know that my company just acquired another company, and we're going to merge networks. We're going to where there's going to be a point where we merge, and we're going to start merging our networks. I have some threat intelligence through one of my providers or internal threat intel analysts, and they say that there's an adversary out there that has a history of moving through vulnerable partner networks to get into our vertical. So they like to target people that way. And then I have some cybersecurity knowledge myself because I'm a cybersecurity professional and I know occasionally a thing or two. And a common lateral movement in these types of cases is SMB. That's a really good lateral movement mechanism. It's something adversaries like to use, especially in situations like this. So based on those three areas of knowledge, I didn't have to use all three, but in this case, I have all three. I develop a hypothesis, which is an adversary will attempt to move laterally through the new network connection point using common SMB exploitation tactics during the week of the network merge. Okay, is this testable? Yes, I can go out and look at SMB traffic and look for things that look like lateral movement. Is it falsifiable? If I don't see lateral movement in that limited window of time and limited window of space, and I look at all the SMB traffic, then I'm comfortable to a certain level of confidence that I have disproved this hypothesis. And it's reasonably scoped. It'll depend on my environment, but I'll just say in this environment that's a reasonable amount of logs to handle. This is a usable hypothesis for threat hunting. We can go out and say with some level of certainty whether this is true or false, whether somebody is doing this bad thing that we are concerned about happening based on our knowledge, or it isn't happening. So some other good tactics for threat hunting and developing these hypotheses. We have a cyber kill chain. It's an academic model, but it's a reasonable academic model for doing this type of stuff, because you want to try to do detection and hunting across multiple levels of the kill chain, multiple parts of an adversary attack. You've got other great academic models to do this. You've got things like MITRE ATT&CK. You've got the ICS cyber kill chain. You've got the Purdue model in industrial environments. Try to put your hunting and detection at strategic points throughout those models and detect at multiple levels. And I've got my two maxims here. So my first maxim is hackers, like humans, are generally lazy. And again, that's no dig on red teamers or hackers who work for criminal organizations or anything. It's common sense to work smarter, not harder. So adversaries are normally going to use the path of least resistance, and you can factor that into your threat hunting. Anti-Lesley's law number 2, even the most advanced adversaries must follow the laws of reality. They can't just skip the whole kill chain and like magically appear in your environment. Like they have to get there somehow. They have to issue commands to their malware or designate commands somehow. That has to happen. Otherwise, they can't achieve their objectives. So they have to do some detectable things in order to launch attacks. They're somewhere where you can catch them. I promise you, if you have a decently mature security organization, there is somewhere you can catch the bad, especially using threat hunting. So I'm going to introduce you briefly to the threat hunting life cycle. This was introduced in the paper I referenced earlier, the SANS white paper, and it's just a good model for doing threat hunting. So quick little overview of it. So you start with the purpose phase. The purpose phase is, why the heck am I threat hunting? What do I want to find? What am I concerned about in my environment? You know, you've done your risk and consequence in modeling. Am I concerned about somebody getting all my domain creds and dumping them to the internet? I don't know. We've got to figure this out as an organization. What do we care about? What are we trying to hunt for and why? And how am I going to quantify success? How am I going to say my threat hunting has been beneficial to the organization? We need to decide that in advance. That's an important part of being a part of a business. And then we scope, our scoping phase. We talk about what time and space we should reasonably hunt over. So what will actually work? What's reasonable for our human brains? We work out a hypothesis. We use our 3 sources of hypothesis development, and we develop a hypothesis based on what we're trying to accomplish. And we make sure that it's testable and falsifiable. It's a reasonable scientific hypothesis. And then we start thinking about how we're going to test it. So what tests can we go out there and do in our logs or our evidence or our computer images or Sysmon, whatever, to try to disprove this hypothesis. And then we equip for the hunt. So we need stuff to do threat hunting, right? So we need time, we need people with the right skills, maybe some senior people and some junior people we're trying to train up. We need some data to hunt in. That might be going out and getting PCAPs, or it might be existing logs in our Splunk or Elasticsearch, whatever. So what data, what collections of data do we have that are relevant to this hunt, and what are we going to use based on our hypothesis and our retention? What other tools do we want to use? So if we're going out and getting packet captures, we're going to need some tools to process them, right? We might need Zeek, we might need Suricata, whatever, or even just Wireshark or T-Shark. Sure, we might need some tools. We got to figure that out. And are we going to need outside resources, like outside expertise on a system? We might. We got to figure that out. And tools for threat hunting, use what you want. They exist already in your environment. You shouldn't be building out massive new tool sets to do threat hunting. That's why this is a farther stage down the maturity line. You should be using your security operations and your incident response tools to do threat hunting as well. They collect the same data that you'll need to do threat hunting for the most part. Hunting should not be fishing for new data sources. You should have already identified that. That's something you should have done earlier in the spectrum. You should be utilizing the tools that you're comfortable with and have good visibility in new ways. You should be adapting them to get more out of them in threat hunting. So if you have, say, full packet capture, you're not just using it to fire signatures anymore. Now you're threat hunting in it, and you have people going through it in more detail. So you're using the existing data sources and the existing tools in new ways with human brain power to start trying to disprove these hypotheses about bad people on your network. And that's awesome. You're getting more value out of the things you've purchased. And then we have another phase, which is the plan review phase. So we do a little sanity check. Is it worth spending the time and the money and the effort on this threat hunt? So it might be a sanity check from our peer or our manager or just from us internally. Does this plan make sense? Are we going to go do this 5-hour or 10-hour threat hunt? Or 1-week threat hunt even, if it's a really sophisticated thing? Are we going to allocate resources to this, and does it make sense? So we make sure that we are doing the right thing. And then we go ahead and we do our threat hunt. So we go out and we conduct our tests to try to disprove our hypothesis. We try to, we take some notes, we figure out what we're seeing. If we have problems getting data, we write that down. If we see things that look like the hypothesis might be proven, we write that down. And we produce maybe some kind of report or resolution for our ticketing system about what we found. And in the end, we determine an outcome for our hypothesis. And there's 3 ways it can turn out. It's, first of all, I found evil, and now this has become incident response, so now this is reactive. There is something bad on my network. I've got to deal with it. Uh-oh. The second one is, to a reasonable level of confidence, I've disproved this hypothesis. So if you have a good hypothesis, you should be able to a reasonable level say, no, I didn't see an adversary doing this specific thing on the network. Okay, let's move on to something else. And that's fine. We don't base our success on adversaries being there or not. That's ridiculous. We can't hope that the adversary is there to make us look good in our metrics. No, it's fine to disprove a hypothesis. That's good. And then there's the unfortunate third option, which is, I don't know. Something went wrong in my threat hunt, and I'm not sure if there's a bad person doing this thing or not. So that's the one you don't want to have. That's the one that you've had a problem. Something has gone wrong in your threat hunting, and you need to deal with that. So finally, in your feedback stage, you go back and look at all this, and you say, what did I learn from this threat hunt? How can I improve my threat hunting in the future? Again, we're not basing our success on adversary activity. If we disproved all of our threat hunting hypotheses, that's super. An adversary isn't there doing those things this week. But you should have, with certainty, either falsified or proved your hypothesis. If you couldn't, you need to take a look at that and see where you need more logging or better training, etc. You might have detected some new uses for your tools, and those should be documented. So maybe you can do some more automated detection for things. So build up your automated triage and alerting capability. And maybe you find some places where you need better defense in your network. That's awesome too. That's a wonderful byproduct of threat hunting. And threat hunting gives us a lot of cool stuff. So, you're first of all, of course, you're doing the basic purpose of threat hunting is detecting these newer kind of human-powered attacks. But it also is good for places in your network where you might not have good automated coverage for various reasons. So places you don't have EDR, places where you can't put sensors. So maybe you go out and do threat hunting in those environments using packet captures because you don't have the capability to install anything else for various operational reasons. You can quickly adapt threat hunting, sometimes faster than signatures get released. So if you're aware of some threat intelligence about a new attack that's underway, you can do some threat hunting for that attack before your vendors even get to that point where they can automatically detect it. So that's awesome. Your threat hunts should give you new ways to secure your network. They should give you new visibility. They should give you ideas of where to increase your security, new ways to use your tools and your data sources, your collections of data. And you're better using your human analysts. So you're not making them sit there and do mindless drone work of triaging the same alert over and over again. You're training them to be creative, deductive, cybersecurity professionals instead. So who needs threat hunting? Who am I trying to sell this to on this call? Well, everybody's going to need it because adversaries are using these tactics, period, end of story, and everybody's a target for one reason or another. But who really, really, really needs it right now? So the industrial space, because we can't put EDR in those systems in a lot of cases. We can't use a lot of next generation tools because we're stuck in a vendor, system of devices that is under warranty or very legacy system. So industrial environments threat hunting becomes very, very crucial because it takes the place of some automated detection and some modern tools that we can't deploy for various reasons. High value target systems that are likely to draw advanced adversary attention. I don't know what that is in your environment. Can't call it. I don't want to speculate, but if you've got those types of systems in your environment, you should be doing threat hunting around them because you know based on threat intelligence that those systems are potentially a target. Networks where real-time automated detection is limited due to segmentation or topology. So yeah, I mean, that could occur for zillions of reasons. Why you don't have a span port in that section, or why you can't deploy sensors there, why you don't have full automated visibility to a part of your network. Threat hunting is a good solution there. In environments where analyst time must be tightly rationed, you shouldn't be blowing all your time triaging the same alerts over and over and over again when you can do threat hunting to look for specific things that concern you. You're wasting time just looking at all the logs everywhere if you only have one analyst and you could dedicate their time to looking for specific things that really matter to your organization. I'd recommend that even if you aren't mature enough for a threat hunting program today, think about it as part of your future strategy. It's really important. Make sure those prerequisite stages like architecture knowledge and understanding your data collections are done so you can do threat hunting later. Yeah, so if you've had an incident, think about how you could have better detected the things that happened in the incident using threat hunting. And, try to train your analysts to do proactive threat hunting instead of just triage and alerting. That's a wonderful skill set. If you need to bring in outside experts, that's always an option. All your security vendors today do threat hunting services. We do, other companies do as well. If you have a partnership or a retainer, see if they can come in and do some threat hunting. You do need a level of maturity to do that, but they can give you some ideas. And just work on using your human brains instead of just, dedicating them to doing alert triage that a machine can do. So where have I seen threat hunting go horribly, horribly wrong? Here's a quick overview. Trying to threat hunt is an immature organization, so not knowing what's in your environment and trying to do a threat hunt. Again, I'm out there building your asset inventory. There's no point. You need to do basic steps to be mature enough to do threat hunting. Purchasing or directing a threat hunt with no prep work, yeah, that's just cruel to your analysts or cruel to your contractors. Again, they're going to be stuck doing those basic steps. Impossible scope. Telling your analysts to hunt over the lifetime of your company or over 5 years of logs that are massive. You should scope threat hunts to reasonable amounts of time and space. Not equipping threat hunters properly. They need tools. They need training. This is a skill set. Yes, the tools are shared usually with incident response, but if those tools don't exist at all, threat hunting is going to be very hard to do. Poor hypotheses. Hypotheses seem such an artificial construct to a lot of us who try to do this in our brains, but it's really important to write down these hypotheses as part of your threat hunts, because if you do them wrong and you end up with these bad hypotheses, your threat hunts are going to be worth nothing, because you're going to end up with things that you can never disprove, and it's just not going to tell you anything about adversary activity in your network. Calling incident response or ops, which are reactive things, a threat hunt. They are not. The moment you see a bad thing happening on your network, you are in response mode. You are in triage mode. You are reacting to a bad thing that's happened in your network. That's not a threat hunt. Threat hunt involves this strategy and those sources of knowledge to develop hypotheses about what an adversary might be doing, not what you've potentially seen them do. Different thing. Relying on magical black boxes to do threat hunting for you. Yeah, there is no product in the world that you can buy that will do threat hunting for you. Period, end of story. They are trying to sell you FUD. I know people are selling products that are supposed to, they have the word threat hunting in them. They can be good tools to use in threat hunting, but threat hunting is a human process. So I'm going to end it up there. Does anybody have any questions about threat hunting? What do you all want to talk about? Hopefully relevant to this talk. Let me know.
Hi, Lesley. Great talk. I really enjoyed that.
Thank you.
You know, I had a question actually that came to mind, and it sort of goes like this. And I've heard you talk about this before, but I'd love to hear a little bit more. I think in the information security industry, a lot of us who have considered looking at ICS have come with this somewhat arrogant position that we know more than the industrial control people. So could you talk about briefly that learning journey for you and perhaps what we can learn from that community instead of what we arrogantly think we can teach them?
Yeah, so we both bring knowledge to this. Industrial systems are a career, just like cybersecurity is a career, and every niche of cybersecurity is a different career. We both bring things to the IT, OT security space. I call myself a marriage counselor sometimes when I go into these environments because the relationship is so hostile between cybersecurity and the operators working in industrial systems, usually based on people coming in with that attitude and causing damage to industrial systems. It can really sour the relationship. It can make it hard to do security later. And I sometimes just have to sit at the table to make a dialogue happen. Everybody brings something to the securing industrial systems at that table. If you think about threat hunting that we just talked about, you need to have a lot of system knowledge and operational knowledge to understand how a consequence could occur in an industrial system. The industrial operators don't care if their system is infected with Sality. Like, if it's not causing an impact to their operations, and it won't cause an impact to their operations, they don't care. They care about making widgets or the power being on. They care about their process not being disrupted or impacted. So you need to understand from their perspective how the process works, where there are potential failure points and consequences could occur. So they are the ones who are going to educate you on that. You need to think about things from that perspective to understand where to threat hunt. Where would an adversary target that system? You don't know. You're not a chemical engineer or an electrical engineer, usually. You don't know those things. You need their expertise to do that. You're bringing in your own wealth of expertise as a cybersecurity person, and they're not necessarily going to have all of that knowledge. But you need to work together to figure out where an adversary would attack.
So follow-on question, it sort of strikes me, you know, knowing and having briefly experienced some of the controls that are deployed out there in industrial systems, that, you know, with that sort of level of arrogance, it's not like we can walk in and stick agents on the endpoints and go, you know, all of your Windows XP systems that were installed 25 years ago that are controlling these valves just have to run this extra software now. So how do you go about having had that conversation that we just talked about? How do you go about layering in the appropriate instrumentation and technologies to complement what they're doing without interfering in that operation?
You know, and a lot of times you can't touch those systems because it's like buying an IBM system in the 70s. When you buy one of those industrial systems, you're buying all the levels of technology that go into it and work together. So from the computers, the things that are familiar, down to the field devices and the PLCs, things like that. They're bought as a package and they're warranted and supported as such. So you can't go modifying them without losing your warranty or your support contract. And you can, of course, cause the system to stop working. A lot of times you have to work around those constraints. You just have to be creative. A lot of times passive detection is best because you can usually put a span port or a tap anywhere without disrupting operations. So that's a good tactic. You can do passive detection. Sometimes you can do active things. You know, it really depends on the operator's capabilities in, you know, what they have control of in the system and what they can agree on with the vendor and what the system's capabilities are. There's nothing that says there aren't some higher level systems in OT environments that might be eligible to install EDR on or something else. It's really a discussion you have to have. And you have to work around those constraints because in the end, your objective as an organization is to keep the widgets flowing or to keep the power on. You know, that's your job as an organization. You are supporting that.
Absolutely. So, you know, you did make several comments about maturity in different environments. which to me has parallels with what we see in the pen testing industry. That in the non-ICS space, we also have the same maturity concerns. And one of the key items that you mentioned, which is, sort of base level, is, if you guys don't even know what's on your network, if you don't even know what's out there, there's no way we can start this threat hunt. There's no way we can even begin to try to help you out in terms of moving this forward.
It's exactly the same for pen testing. And I don't presume to speak for red teamers or pen testers, but yeah, at a certain level of immaturity, you're not getting any value out of a pen test or an assessment, just like you're not getting value out of a threat hunt, or your incident response is severely crippled. It's just the nature of the things. You need to do those basic hygiene and architectural things before you can build a more mature security program.
So, given that I've asked my questions, but is anybody out there in the land of the Discord, do you guys have any questions for Lesley? You've got her for a few more minutes here, so now's your opportunity. So we'll jump to track one. We're getting a few comments here. Good insights from the presentation. Thank you. Any particular questions? One, how did you get started with your career? I suppose that's a little bit directed towards perhaps into ICS. You want to make a comment about getting started? I don't know if they're asking
about cybersecurity in general or they're talking about ICS. Cybersecurity in general, I started programming really, really young, like 7, 8 years old. I got my first job when I was 15. And I've been doing this for a long time now. Got involved in the hacker community in the 90s. Yeah, they've been doing this for a while. Industrial systems, I was in the Air Force, and they taught me how to work on avionics computer systems. And that kind of got me started. I actually got an avionics degree through that. And so I've been working on like non-standard computer systems for a while as well. I, in various verticals. So kind of the space I found myself in for a lot of my career.
So we have time for one more, and this one's a good one, I think, Lesley. The comment is, the talk is wonderful. Thank you so much. Where are forums, peer groups, or people talking about this and related topics at a high level with a focus on business justification? Do you have any comments there?
Ooh. Man, I'm kind of talking about this because people aren't having those conversations. There's a lot of good differ groups that do some discussions of threat hunting. You'll find them happening around the place, but a central discussion around threat hunting, I guess the MITRE attack space is probably the most likely candidate of where you'll see the good discussions around that, because people there understand threat hunting across the various stages of the MITRE attack framework. Yeah, it's kind of a tough community right now to get into. There's not a lot of good discussion going on about threat hunting as a general practice.
Well, that sounds like an opportunity to build some relationships to me. So hopefully Lesley will stand by for a few minutes in track one there and be able to answer a few more questions.
Sure.
We want to thank you so much, Lesley, for talking at Wild West Hacking Fest here on, I suppose it's really day one, even though we had some stuff last night. It's been great to have you. Of course, we wish you were we're all here in person, so we can have.
I look forward to it in the future. Thank you, though.
Yeah.
I'm so thrilled to be here today, and thanks for letting me talk about the topic that I care about a lot.